Hello and welcome to the P3 podcast. I am ridiculously excited about this one. As you can hear, I'm sat here with not only just one of my good friends, but a true inspiration. And the best thing about it is he doesn't realize he is. What he does is just normal. So I'll just give you a little bit of flavour about Craig Williams, who's our guest today. Ex-Royal Marine sniper, entrepreneur.
Get in there.
Elite athlete. It's crazy what you author. Yeah, many skills to this guy, and they all do actually take a logical sequence, don't they, in terms of what we're going to talk about today. And a lot of the themes are true to what the P3 podcast is about. It's about that personal development, that overcoming sort of challenges, the right mindset for success, and striving to be better, you know, and to do more and to positively influence more people. And I know you do that. And it's great to have you here, Craig. Thanks so much for willing to come and speak to us today. It's really exciting for me. I genuinely mean that.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. It's good to be here. When I look back on the last 6 or 7 years, you know, there's been a couple of things that have been pivotal. Is a word I never used to be able to say. I can now, thanks to you. In everything that I do, and your influence has been a massive part of that. So to give a little bit back today and perhaps share some of that with your audience and the people you work with, then I'm up for that.
No, it's great, and the beauty of it is it's a reciprocal arrangement, isn't it? We all look after each other, that's for sure. So it's great. So I want to take it right back to the start. Now I obviously know it's Halifax you're originally from. What was your childhood like in terms of, you know, adventure and challenging yourself? I
think adventure and challenge. I don't know how much adventure and challenge I had. Let me get this right. So me and my brother were a proper power pair, and we used to create adventure from swimming in the local canals to, you know, my mum used to literally give us like an ice cream tub with sandwiches in and an orange juice bottle full of like juice and say, right, I'll see you when the street lights come on, you know. And we take the mickey out of her now because it's like she's got some great stories. One time we basically put my mum through the roof, through the floor upstairs because the electrician had been and lifted this trapdoor and we'd seen it. Got up early the next day and we was looking under the trapdoor, heard my mum come, so we dragged a rug over the hole, which sent my mum, you know, my mum stepped on it, went straight through the floor. And she kind of, you know, she's like, these little buggers, they were terrors when they were kids. And my reply is like, well, where the hell were you, you know, when we was out creating all this havoc? And so, yeah, we used to create our own adventures. And as for, you know, what was my childhood like, I had the usual, it seems usual now, parents split, early age, and then I had the two sides, dad's side and mum's side and all this kind of stuff. And but that didn't really affect me or anything like that. You know, I just remember from my childhood that I had a good childhood, a fun childhood. And my mum and a lot of my mum's side of the family are very much, you've made your bed, get on with it. You know, they were like, no nonsense, straight talking Yorkshire folk that worked hard. And that's probably the best way to describe my childhood, really. Yeah, and there's a good thing there. You're definitely, you know, a hard worker, aren't you? You definitely, you've brought that forward into your adulthood, and that's something you've been conscious on. You talked to me before about, you know, early starts and your routine now of how you get things done. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that for us? Yeah, I mean, I think I talk to a lot of people and think, I wish I had more discipline, but I think they forget sometimes that discipline has two meanings. One's a verb, it's something that we do, you know, and one's a noun, it's a naming word, and therefore it's something that is, you know, and so therefore any routine is discipline. You know, that makes sense. I'm explaining that right. So, you know, I have the discipline of getting up every morning, and it's not something I have to do, it's just something that I am, you know, and so I usually get up between sort of 4 and 5. I wake naturally, having had 7.5 to 8 hours sleep, which is something to be practiced and worked on, you know. So and what I aim to do is try and do a full day's work before everybody else gets up. So then anything that comes in the rest of the day is on my terms. It doesn't really matter. I've got loads of freedom. Freedom is a massive value of mine, and I've got loads of freedom then to do whatever I want, really, without feeling the pressure. And and you sort of think, well, how can you get a full day done between 4 and say 8? Well, it's because no one's there to distract you, so you can just naturally get more done. I also I have a 3 sort of step system where I'll simplify something that I'm doing regularly. I'll then try and automate it, and if I can't automate it, I'll work really hard to outsource it. And they're the kind of 3 steps that I try and do. So I don't always nail it. I said try. I try and do it every day, and that's kind of how I work on being productive, and that gives me a lot of time then to be able to go off and do my own adventures and whatever. And that's kind of how it works.
Yeah, that freedom is important, isn't it? So you do that graft, that dedication early in the morning, get your work done, and then you've got freedom to be distracted, go and have some crazy ideas or crazy projects. And that makes complete sense. But what I'm really interested in, I think what the guys at home will be really interested in, is how did you go from that freedom at child level, when you're growing up, to where you are now? So the next step for me, in my understanding, was joining the Marines fairly young. Is that correct?
Yeah, I played a bit of rugby league. I was on the fringe of like professionalism and or playing professionally. To be honest, I weren't quick enough, and I weren't really big enough. On the whole, stats were against me. And although a lot of my friends went on and signed, and they played at a really good level, I was kind of passed over, especially because at that time they'd introduced the Super League into rugby league, and everybody got an injection of cash, and the guys that weren't really making it just kind of got pushed to a side. And I basically did a little test at school, you probably remember it, where it looked at all your personality traits and what you like and what you dislike, and top of mine was the Royal Marines. And I'd always fantasized about being a soldier and being outdoors and working outdoors all the time. And when this came up, I thought, oh, what is this Royal Marine Commando?
So there was no family connection, because that tends to be, I know that with my experience, a lot of people.
Yeah, I didn't have any. I had a massive family. My mum is one of 8. One of them died quite young, so 7 brothers and sisters, and my dad is one of 6 brothers and sisters. I think I got loads and loads of cousins, huge family both sides, and not one of them had been in the forces. I think my uncle had done a couple of years, and then he had to leave, medically discharged, and but he was the only one that had ever really done. My granddad was farming in the war, during the war, and my grandma was an evacuee. But neither of them had sort of served in the forces. So yeah, it was just a weird one. And I think what it was like I had this idea of, I want to be outside. And I thought when I was really young that I was going to be like a gamekeeper or a fish farmer or something. My dad used to joke, like, how the hell do you milk a fish? But I had this thing about being outdoors. And then all of a sudden I became aware of this thing called the Green Beret and being commando trained. And I was like, what's that? And it just created a bit of intrigue.
So what age are you at this point?
So I was about 15 and a half. And at 16, the earliest you can join the forces, I went to the careers office to join the Marines. And I remember it really clearly because I walked in, and it used to be, it's not like that now, but it used to be that if you couldn't do 10 strict overhand pull-ups, you wouldn't even get an interview. Yeah. And so you walked in. Yeah, you walked in. And the guy was like, I said, look, I'm quite interested in joining the Marines. And he went, right, follow me. Didn't say anything else, follow me. Went into the back of the office, and there was a pipe. And he said, right, jump up there, give me 10 pull-ups. And I jumped up, and I burnt my hands because it was a heating pipe. And I was like, fucking hell. And he started laughing. And he was like, if you can't stand a joke, don't even try and join the Marines, So then he took me over to the proper pull-up bar and said, right, jump up, do your pull-ups. So I had burnt hands. I was shitting my pants already because, I was a young kid, and there was a big strapping Marine in front of me. And I did the pull-ups, like shaking like a shitting dog, trying to get my last pull-up out because it was tough at that age. And I managed to get an interview. And then from there, I started the process, the medical and all that. And at the time, I was like, I had the chance of perhaps playing at least semi-professional rugby league and A-levels at school. And the guy was like, look, he's young. He's got a couple of other potential avenues that he should explore. And he basically sent me away, and unknown to me until recently, he'd phoned my mum, and he said, look, in order to join the Marines, he's got to have your signature. Please don't sign the paperwork, because let him explore his A-levels, rugby league, see what happens, and then he can come back when he's a little bit older because he's probably just a little bit too young. And I didn't want to hear that at that age. But that's what I did anyway. My mum said, look, I'm not signing it. Do your A-levels. We think it's a good idea. So I did enough to scrape a couple of A-levels together. I carried on playing rugby league for a bit in the academy at Huddersfield. And come the minute I could join then, you know, I was like 17 and a half really. I could start this application without my mum's signature. I was like, right, I'm going, I'm doing it. So that was it. I joined at 17 and a half and I was crap. No, it was a big culture shock. And I think I was just young enough and daft enough to just soak it all up and hang in there, you know.
So when you say you were crap and, you know, it's famously difficult, isn't it? You know, the Royal Marines training down at Limestone there. What was it like? You know, let's take into account that most of the listeners to this have got no military background whatsoever. Just describe it to them. Yeah,
I think the SAS Who Dares Wins series gives it, you know, a little bit of insight into what it's like. Although even that can't really, you know, there's a difference between doing a TV show for a couple of weeks or whatever and doing something for 9 months. Like the training is 9 months long. I went through everything from, you know, exhilaration to tears on the phone, you know, begging my mum to come and get me. And she's like, you bloody made your bed, you get on with it, you know. And really tough. Some of the things you would call it inhumane. In the military, they call it conditioning because, you know, let's face it, at some point you're gonna face some quite tough times, and you need to condition for that, you know. And you're going to be asked to do some pretty horrible things at times, so that everybody at home can sleep soundly in bed, and that takes conditioning as well. So everything is a process to not so much to turning into like a robot, but just giving the ability to act without thinking when you need to. Do you want like specific?
Yeah,
times?
Why not? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I listened to a podcast recently, a friend of ours, Phil Quirk, and he was talking about this thing called wet and dry routine. And so basically what wet and dry routine is, on the outset, it's a way for you to look after yourself when you're living outdoors, perhaps for years on end, and being able to function. But deep down, it's the initial start of building resilience and building grit and being able to get through challenging things. So basically, regardless of the weather conditions, you do whatever you do during the day in one set of clothes, which would just get wet, muddy, you know, stinking, whatever you are. You might be completely submerged, crawling through swamps, whatever it is. And then that night you would get undressed from that into some dry kit, which you would then sleep in to give your body a bit of a rest, dry, and all that kind of stuff. But then the next morning, or whatever time you get up, you got to get your wet kit on. And everything inside you is sort of saying, stay in your dry clothes, you know, stay comfortable. But then if you did that, you would end up with 2 lots of wet kit. And therefore, you know, then potentially a liability. And that's what, you know, that's one of the things that you remember from your training, you know, practicing this wet and dry routine and really just putting yourself in uncomfortable conditions. You know, crawling through thorn bushes and, you know, and lots of stuff like that. Another time, and I remember phoning home in tears after this one, but we used to get what we called quick changes. So basically the idea was like they can only thrash you physically so much, having you doing press ups and running up and down hills and all this kind of stuff. And for some people, it gets to the point where if they don't give in, they're not going to give in. They'll pass out before they give in. And the majority of the early days of Marines training is trying to get you to give in. You know, so you don't have to be the fastest, the strongest, or anything like that. You've just got to hang in there no matter what. And so what they then start doing is putting some like psychological tests on you, and one of them is to mess around with your spare time and your kit and all this kind of stuff. So you do these quick changes. So it'd basically go like this: you'd line out outside the accommodation, and the instructor would go, right, the time now is 2:30. In 5 minutes, you'll be back down in your sports gear. So you'd sprint up 4 flights of steps into your room, open your locker, get undressed, get your clean gear on, sprint back down, in 5 minutes, line out again, and then they'd just thrash you in that, up and down, in the mud, in the tank, big water tank and all this. Line you out again, right, time now is 2:45. In 5 minutes, you'll be back down here in your best dressed uniform or whatever. So you'd sprint up, and this would go on for until you basically used every item of clothing in your locker. So your locker was just full of just muddy, shitty clothes, an absolute mess. And then obviously what would follow would be a locker inspection late in the night or whatever. And it'd just go on forever. And you're just messing with sleep deprivation and really testing your character. One particular time when I was doing the quick changes, as one of the unwritten rules in the Marines is that every time you get changed, you get showered. It dates back to the naval times on ships when cleanliness was a real big thing. And it still is today. But so you'd have to have a shower. And when you have a shower, you have to wear flip-flops because of Rukas and all this. And they're just these little unwritten rules that you do. And I ran in to get a shower without my flip-flops. And our drill leader was there, and he had big hobnail boots, metal studs in the bottom, really shiny. You can see your face in it. And I was like, Williams, stand still. And I'd stand to attention. And he came along and he stamped on my feet with his hobnail boots. And my feet were bleeding. He goes, get some fucking flip-flops on, and it hurt, and I was a kid. I was like 17 and a half, whatever, and this big guy with a massive 80s style tash had just stamped on my feet, and it really hurt. And I phoned home, and I was like, Mum, he stamped on my feet, they're all cut up, I don't know what to do, I can't handle this anymore and all this. And she was like, you made your bed. You knew this was coming, you get on with it. Now I look back at that and I think that was too far, and there's a definite line between testing someone's character and out bullying, and that was an indication of bullying. But it was things like that all the time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it seems like you know what the output needs to be. So you're looking for somebody who's disciplined, is going to follow orders, have the right mindset, not going to give in. They're going to be there for their team members, if you like. But you do have to test that. But I think that you also, as what you're saying is, you've got to test it in the right way. And I think times have moved on, haven't they? And I'm sure it's not like that now to a certain degree, because I don't think you can get away with it. But at the same time, they've still got to do the same output or have the same output. How do you think? I don't know if have you got contact still in now? Has it changed slightly now?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. It really has changed a lot. It's gone from what used to be, what I've described, to much more coaching, mentoring, which I think is immense, because I did time as a recruit instructor as well, and that's kind of the way I hate bullies and I hate bullying. So for me, I was very much wanting to nurture great Marines rather than than trash young lads or whatever. So it's definitely gone more into that. I think there is in society now, it's a lot of it's polarized. So I think recruits are much more informed than we used to be, of what's acceptable and what's not, and what if it's not acceptable, these are the routes. And I think there is talk of them having like a yellow card, that if they feel like they're being bullied, they can sort of, no, that's too far, and that will trigger an investigation or whatever. So I think it's gone in the right direction, but as with everything, there is that polar side of it where it's just a little bit too much. That said, I still think we're getting the cream of British youth. I really do. So,
the output's incredible, and you just got to look at some of the things that ex-Marines are doing after they've left. It's that principle of the can-do attitude, isn't it? That positive mindset, which I know we're going to talk about later on, and you're a great example of that. So fast forward then, so 9 months of pleasantries, should we say?
Yeah.
Enjoying the bottom field down there. What did your actual serving career post-training look like?
I remember probably two parts. First part was very much what you would expect to join for. So lots of travel. I think I did 22 different countries in my first year of service. Everything from mountain, like a mountain environment, the Arctic environment, jungle, desert. I did all the major environments. And then after that, I played a lot of rugby. Probably did about 2 years of playing rugby every 2 weeks. So I spent a lot of time in a tracksuit. And then my commanding officer, well, my troop commander then said, look, Craig, Williams, you don't use your first name.
Definitely not.
Marine Williams, you're playing a lot of sport and this is brilliant, but we're trying to write reports and we never see you. So you've got to stop playing rugby. And so I was like, okay, fair enough. And then I started boxing. So I started boxing on the back of that. And then I did 12 months sort of really boxing, at like unit level and then onto like the Marines level, which was great. But same again, we're trying to write reports. We never see you, yada, yada. So then I really started getting into soldiering, and it probably took me those 3 or 4 years to find my feet. Like I said, I struggled in training. I struggled physically. I struggled. It was hard, and a massive learning curve. You sort of think you can only really do training, physical training for a couple of hours a day, and then it becomes detrimental to what you're doing for the rest of the time. And of course, you're learning about radios, camouflage and concealment, tactics and drills and all this kind of stuff. And the learning curve is massive. It really took me by surprise, and I struggled with that learning curve. And it was only after like 2 or 3 years of being in an actual commando unit when things started to fall into place. And I actually found that given time to catch up, I was very good at it. And I was definitely a member of my sort of 70-man company that people looked up to, and listened to. And I felt I had probably developed through rugby as well. I had a bit of a knack for leadership and inspiring people, especially when it started to get hard. I think there's a lot of people that can lead people in the general day-to-day, but when things like it comes down to brass tacks or whatever, it takes someone special then to step up, and I felt I had a bit of a skill at that. So then my soldiering career pretty much started, and I did a lot of specialist soldiering courses, and I found that I started to get noticed, and then started getting promoted pretty quick. So when I left training, there was Marines, Lance Corporals, which is like the first ladder really of the promotional, or the first run of the promotional ladder, that had done like 13 years, and they had like great grades on their reports and what have you. But there were still Marines waiting to go on like a course to become a corporal. And after sort of 5 years, I was loaded onto one of these courses. I got an A on the course, which was, I didn't come top, but I was very close.
So you're about 22 at this point, I'm guessing?
Yeah, 22, 23. I'd done an operational tour in Kosovo, which was immense, probably one of the best operational tours I've ever done, purely because we were the law.
Yeah, so there's a lot of peacekeeping and
it was all peacekeeping, yeah. And it was a different environment from sort of scratching around in bushes and that kind of stuff to actually being sort of embedded in the city, and the city just kind of cracking on with its life, and you maintaining order and getting guns, drugs, and other bits of organised crime off the street. It was an immense tour. From there, I was picked up really quick. Also, from there, I went on to do my junior command course, which is the course to become a corporal. And the real was that when you finished a course like that, you're nowhere near ready to progress on to the next step. So it's accepted that your next report would be like a C, sort of saying that you're developing, you're in your role now, you're developing well, and everything's fine. B would be like ahead of his peers, still got room for development. And I went from there straight onto the initial invasion of Afghanistan. And as a corporal, I was doing the role of a sergeant. I was in charge of a support troop. So under me, I had machine gunners, mortarmen, snipers, and I kind of ran this little troop. And on that operation, I got a commendation. It was the third commendation that I'd received during my time at the Marines. And my first report after my junior command course was an A.
Right.
And everyone was like, well, that just doesn't happen, and it shouldn't happen, because by rights, how can you finish a junior command course 1 minute and then being told you got a senior command course to become a sergeant within 6 months. It's just
to put this in context for those that work in other industries, we're talking about somebody who's 22, 23 becoming a team leader. So, so you're in charge of a team of 6, 7, 8 potentially, to then doing a promotion course, being tested in a theatre, going out to Bosnia, and then coming back and effectively being told, well, actually, you can become a leader now and lead teams and team leaders at the age of potentially 24. So that's a lot of responsibility on someone fairly young. So you've progressed exceptionally quick there. And if I remember rightly, and if it crosses over with my experiences, they had to give you an A because of your level of performance and the experience and evidence based on that report. So it's not a case of somebody's going, he's doing really well, I like him, let's give him an A. They have to back it up with evidence. So obviously you did something right.
Yeah. Well, I did a lot right, really. I mean, it was a really successful operation and time in Afghanistan. We all know kind of the kind of crap that went down there. And I was working. I was doing the job of someone more senior to me, and I did it really well.
I was going to say, it's not a case of just stepping up. You're stepping up and doing it really, really well. So did that tap into your natural sort of gift and flair for leadership, do you think? It was an opportunity for you to excel?
Yeah, it was. I mean, we were, as the manoeuvre support troop, we were the heaviest troops on the ground. Some of the kit we was carrying was equal to our body weight. It was just absolutely ridiculous at altitude as well. So we basically, from stepping off the helicopter, we'd literally be able to walk 300 or 400 meters before we had to stop and rest. And obviously, you've got young lads looking at me, one for an example, and then also for instruction, and looking for that reassurance as well. So it was all about the leadership, because I had these young Marines that had a really, really tough job to do. And it really did at times boil down to, playing them against the senior officer. They don't think you can do this, and just lots of different ways of getting people to get that kit up a hill and do some unpleasant stuff like so. And I did it well. I felt at home, really did.
Did you ever experience something? I mean, we used to call it leaders' legs, where you get that opportunity to take on extra responsibility. And it just gives you a natural lift. You're thriving under it, And we talk quite often about when you're challenged, you can either see it as a threat or as an opportunity, And that threat is, oh my God, what am I going to do here? And we start to freeze. Or you see the opportunities here to excel. And I think that shift in mindset can really make a difference in your level of performance at that time. Is that something that sort of resonates at that time with you now, looking back?
Yeah, definitely. There is definitely times where if I'd have been able to step back into the shadows and then I did a bit of an easier ride, I would have done. But I couldn't, and therefore I didn't. But there was also another aspect that we're not talking about, is that one of my roles was I had control what they call the I-STAR function of the company, which is intelligence, surveillance, and target acquisition, as one of the snipers in the company. And so as one person or a pair, we're a force multiplier. So, we can have such a massive effect on the safety and the effectiveness of the whole company, just two people. So every time we'd stop for a rest, for me it would be kit off, grab my rifle, grab my obs kit, me and my spotter, my number two, would leg it up to the top of a feature so that we could keep a lookout and all this kind of stuff. And I was constantly have to do that little bit extra. And I thrived on it. I really did. You just hit the nail on the head there, where people see it as an obstacle or an opportunity, and I did see it as an opportunity. I didn't want to be part of a 70-man snake through the valley. I much prefer being a little bit renegade and a little bit rogue, doing my own thing, So,
and I think you've painted a really good picture there in terms of when you were saying, going out as your 2-man teams and you had specific roles to deliver. I think many people listening to this would be thinking about, as you're talking there, the pictures of, your typical Hollywood movie of a sniper would sort of flash before your eyes, really. Can you give us a little bit more rich detail around the role of a sniper? Because it's not just laying down in a scratch pit, is it, with a rifle ready to go? There's so much more in there. So what are your roles and responsibilities as a sniper?
Well, predominantly, your biggest thing probably is reporting, purely because you're a small team, and you can conceal yourself better, and your observation kit and equipment is just much better. So the average scope on a modern day rifle is ×4, so it's 4 times closer when you look through the sight, whereas my best scope was ×25. So that extra magnification just gives you such a power of observation. But then you've also had training and all that on top of it as well. It just means your ability to report is just so much more. You've also got a lot of responsibility in that you can control what we call indirect fire. So what I mean by that is you can have direct fire, which is governed by weapon range. So basically it's pretty flat trajectory. So what you can see is what you can hit. But indirect fire is you can fire over hills, and a much further distance. And indirect fire includes fast jets, bombers, and all that kind of stuff. So you could control a lot of firepower as a pair. As a Marine, Lance Corporal, Corporal on the ground, you can control something that really would need a general to sign it off and say, yes, yeah, okay, let's go. So and that's what I mean by like it being a force multiplier. It's because you're in control, or you have an influence on much more than just where your weapon's pointing, you're firing. Add to the fact that when we first arrived in Afghanistan, the Americans were sort of, their weapons were, their effective range was about 250 meters, which is a fair distance, and but the Afghan weapons were effective to 300 meters with the altitude, probably 350 meters. So the Afghans could outrange them with the majority of their weapon systems. All of a sudden, we landed in the country, and we had an effective range up to a mile. My longest shot was just short of a mile. Yeah, and obviously, the difference there, or you went from insurgents and terrorists dancing on ridgelines, thinking they could no longer be hit, to shit in the pants, basically. Because all of a sudden, there's different sheriff in time.
Come in with your new toys.
New sheriff in town. So yeah, I don't know if that gives you a bit of an insight. When you're actually, nuts and bolts of it, and you're laid, and people just sort of see you under a bush and all that kind of stuff. Well, concealment is a skill, and it's a form of protection, and it is a skill that's practiced a hell of a lot. So that's one thing. You're doing things like, as you're moving through vegetation and what have you, you're looking at the vegetation thinking, right, that's brown grass, but I've got green grass. Okay, change the grass in my camouflage and all these different kind of things. And when you actually get down in position, you're working with your spotter, your number 2, and you're looking at the wind speed, the altitude, which had a massive effect. The usual effective range of the service rifle at the time was 900 meters, and that was like I said, up to a mile. You could shoot. So, and that's because the altitude was so much. The air was so much thinner, less resistance. The ambient air temperature can affect it. So you're looking at that. You're looking at so many different things there. The wind direction, wind speed. Just so many calculations going on in order to try and get your rounds as accurate as you can. And people sort of see these incredible shots in Hollywood where it's a moving target, 1,000 meters and they hit first time. Well, that doesn't happen. What you need a couple of what we call spotting rounds, so that you can work out where you kind of need to be, and then you're praying for less movement as possible from your target. But yeah, there's a hell of a lot going on as you're preparing a shot.
And it sounds like you're not just going for a walk in the park here. There's so much, and you've got so many roles to sort of deliver. I want to pull out a little bit where you talked around your responsibility for sort of reporting in what you see in your intelligence, which feeds into the bigger tactical and strategic decision making, because that massively crosses over with obviously business world. The bit I was getting there was the trust from higher up on you to do your job effectively, that you're going to report in the right information. They might check and challenge before they make a decision, but they're fully relying on your eyes on the ground, aren't they? And I think sometimes that's lost within organizations, where the people that see the big picture try and get involved in the smaller picture when they haven't actually got the right context and information. So that trust is vital, isn't it? I think it is. Is that what you think?
Yeah, but it works both ways, doesn't it? There's trust coming down, but there's trust in yourself as well. You know, trust that. I mean, I remember looking at. I spotted something that just didn't look right. You know, and sometimes we call it combat indicators, where it's either the presence of the abnormal or the absence of the normal. And you just look at it and you're like, I don't know what it is. It's just not right. And I remember I spotted something. It was about a K-off in the valley floor. And I was like, I don't know what it is. I can't work out what it is. I just know it's not right and it shouldn't be there. So we basically guided a small section onto it. It turned out to be one of the biggest ammunition dumps that had been found since Second World War. And I didn't, you know, all I could see was a little bit of discoloration, some earth that had been moved. And, you know, next thing the engineers are coming in and they're blowing it. And you know, and just from having a little bit of trust in myself. And I think if I'd have constantly been shot down by my superior officers, I wouldn't have had that trust. So it's both ways. And as well as that, if I'd have been proven to be untrustworthy or a bit of a liability, or I don't always give the full account of something or whatever, then they would never have acted on that either. So it's, you know, it's I think it's something to be nurtured, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I talk to our elite athletes about this in terms of, you know, and this is our benefit as Pro Noctis working with elite athletes, is the fact that they can talk to somebody outside of their close remit, if you like, that I'm struggling at the minute. You know, I'm struggling in confidence, or I haven't got clarity, I don't understand this, or I'm just a bit tired, or I'm not sleeping well. If they went inside, you know, an organization and said to the head coach, I'm struggling at the minute with the hands up, it's still very much an old school way of going, well, actually just take a week off, or we're not picking you for this race. That's not what they're saying. You know, they're just saying, I need just a little bit of a recalibration, if you like. So having somebody outside of that bubble to have that conversation with, because the last thing they can do is trying to get across their lack of confidence, lack of trust in themselves at that moment. And it might be just, you know, a couple of words, a couple of right questions to get that clarity, and then they're back on track again. But sometimes it just makes it a bigger deal than it actually is. And I think this crosses over to the workplace as well, that people don't feel like they can speak up when they're struggling. People don't feel like they can put their hands up and go, I need some help at the minute, for the fear of reprimand, really, or the fear of judgment. But there's no time for that when you're on that front line, when people's lives are at risk. There's no time for that, is there?
No, it boils down to integrity as well. And I always remember the mnemonic for leadership that they use in the military, which is JUBWIC, and it stands for judgment, understanding, bearing, wisdom, integrity, courage, and knowledge. And it just rolls off my tongue now, because these are the kind of things that you would learn when you spent your time running around a field, you know what I mean, carrying kit. But integrity is massive. And I think everybody in the Marines as a commando, we've all got a shared experience in that you've earned a green beret, and in order to do that, you've been tested. Therefore, you're already one rung up on the integrity ladder. And then as you're deploying and you're doing your training and you're all doing your training together, and you get to learn how people work, similar to like a team, a football team or whatever. You know, when players start to work, they almost know where their opposite number is going to be. You know what I mean? Because they're
it's automatic.
Drilled. It just becomes automatic. You know this, and it's the same when you're soldiering. You know, therefore, you get to the point where if someone says, "Look, I just don't know what it is, but it warrants being checked out," they're willing to act on that.
Yeah, and I think, and again, as you were talking there, it's that team ethos that you don't want to let anybody down either. You don't want to be the one that drops the ball, or if you do, you've got to make sure your next step's a positive one, because you know there's another team over there, over the other side of the mountain, doing the same work, and we're a team here. That clarity on a common goal, though, isn't it? That's really important in terms of, this is our mission, this is our intent, we need to achieve that. This is how we're going to do it. Now it's up to you to go and deliver that. You know, was that quite clear at the moment? Was the intent really clear before you went out on the ground?
The intent was clear, but on the first operation that we deployed on, we thought we was going to be knee deep in bodies, bayoneting whoever. We soon realised that wasn't going to be the case. Actually, there was very little activity going on, and we'd kind of missed the party a little bit. And there was a definite shift from it going, right, okay, we've got this common goal, this common aim, let's go and do it, to the point where I was like, there's no one here. Now what? Because we're carrying all this heavy kit, and you know what I mean? And why? But there was a shift then to the foundations of being a commando, and that is that professionalism, pride in what you're doing. And okay, this might be the case. However, we might go over this next mountain, and it might be a shit ton of activity there. So stay with it, stay alert, concentrate, focus, because you don't know what's around the corner. But there was a shift, and there was even, when we talk about leadership, there was people going, "What the fuck are we doing here?" Craig, find out what's happening. Go and speak to someone, and because we're wasting our time. We need to be over there where all the war fighting is going on, and obviously there is a big picture with all these things.
Yeah. And that's where we talk about situational leadership, because then your leadership at that moment is to allay those fears of those guys working with you, and in terms of that there's a bigger picture here, what we're working towards, and it's just our role now. I was really interested to hear more about that bit where you were talking about pride in your job, and having that trust, because I think a lot of people turn up, certainly for day one of their new job, super optimistic, super excited, super motivated, and then depending on the culture of the organization and the team that they go into, it can very quickly change to a negative, and they just merge into the culture that's there. And I think that's where the biggest challenge moving forward is, that just sheer effective leadership. And there's no black and white in that, in terms of what effective leadership looks like. It all depends on what your people are doing and what your strategic aim is. And really good leaders are exceptionally flexible. And is that something that you had, do you think, in terms of, were you a flexible leader?
I think I was flexible to a point, and then I was never scared to say, fucking suck it up. Let's get on with this and get this done. Ultimately, I think, without sort of sitting down and really putting some thought to it and just off the cuff answer like now, I think there's a whole, almost like a funnel where we use flexible behavior and flexible leadership. And then if that's not working at some point, you've got to stand and almost say, you either follow me or you don't. Let's go,
But that's a form of flexibility in itself, because some are just fully on it. This is the way you do it now.
Yeah.
Very controlling.
I've never been one like that.
Yeah.
I think, it's there's a saying, in marketing, it's far better to have a compelling offer than a convincing argument. And if you're trying to convince people that this is a good idea, well, you're onto a bit of a loser already. If you've got something that's compelling, then that is completely different. And I think it's weird leadership, and you probably know the interviewee turns interviewer. But I've had people where the last thing they want to be doing when they're managed is to be sort of man managed and controlled. You give them a slight bit of control, and they suddenly become man managers. And I've seen that quite a bit. And I've seen people that try and lead people with a stick, and whether it's carrot and stick or just stick. I think today's society, I'm not sure how much effect that would have, but
yeah, it's actually the lack of accountability is an issue at the moment, where leaders and managers don't feel empowered enough to say, actually, that behaviour is not acceptable, and it's not acceptable because of this, and this. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this instead. So it's that ability to have that. The class was a difficult conversation, and every organisation and leader I coach, or executive leader, I say there's a problem with that. Is you're calling it a difficult conversation before you've had the conversation. So even your mindset going into that is going to be sort of quite negative. No, let's have a productive conversation. So you said this was the outcome. Let's have a chat about it. That's not what we do around here. This would have been better. Let's move on. Let's not hold on to it, but it needs to be called out. And I think the knock-on effect of that conversation to everybody else in the office, in the working place, is that, oh, right, yeah, there is accountability here. Because at the end of the day, you're getting paid. You're on a salary. There's an expected outcome, and you've got a role to do. But also there's the softer skills around that, the way we conduct ourselves day to day. And a lot of our work is around that accountability, because I think we've gone from being quite controlling and direct, which definitely would have been your Royal Marines training. Let's sit around a table and have a discussion around. There's no, you get it done and you get it done now. And if you're too late, you can do it again until you get it done on time. Where that's for a set outcome, a set output at that time, where we've gone the other way now, where it's all about sitting around a table and have discussion about every single thing, where actually sometimes there's got to be some clear direction, because us as humans, we need that. We need that clear direction.
Yeah, definitely. And it's nuggets like that where I love chatting to you.
Yeah, because people will always, even with the best will in the world, they'll try and do the best they can with the resources available. But sometimes they need the torch shone in the right direction and going, well, actually, that's where we're heading. Your path may veer off on the way there, but at least you know what the objective is. And that crosses back into the military world, doesn't it? In terms of our objective today is to seize that. Even back in the day, we're going to go and seize that castle. Well, we don't all go single file going at it. We split all the teams up. We have a tactical approach. Regardless of what happens on those contact times, we know what the objective is, so we're all pulling in the same direction. Sometimes that clarity is not there, and that's very much some of the roles we do around that. So how did Craig Williams, the Royal Marine, get to where you are today as an entrepreneur, an author, an adventure athlete, and a very successful one at that?
To put it in, if I could use one word, 2 words, through failure, if I'm honest, because with everything that went on in the Marines and some things before the Marines, I got into a bit of a shitty mind state, and I actually got into shit. I got into trouble, and I ended up going to prison and spending 2.5 years of a 5-year prison sentence locked up, losing my freedom. Now, in one way, it was terrible because I lost my career. I lost everything that I'd worked hard for well over a decade. I'd gone from decorated soldier to, just a number in prison. And I didn't actually fit in because I'd never really experienced drugs or drug taking. Bullying I hate it, like I said before, and there was bullying everywhere. And everyone, because I held myself differently and I walked around differently and I had different morals and ethics, they thought I was an undercover copper. So I had a real tough time in prison. But on the other hand, it gave me 2.5 years to resettle, ready for Civvy Street. And I left the Marines with soldiering skills, and I remember sort of thinking, what the hell am I going to do in Civvy Street? Because I've just got no Civvy qualifications, a couple of A-levels that I scraped. That had no relevance. One was biology, one was art.
Yeah.
That's I'm going to start drawing elephants. I weren't going to make a living like. So, I basically got into the prison system, and I was like, right, I'm going to wring this system dry for everything I can pick up. So I did maths, English, web design. I did all sorts of different courses, in super quick time as well. And I think that's where personal development, which I'd never really thought of or heard of, started.
Well, when you think back now, that whole Royal Marines experience was a huge personal development journey, wasn't it? You just didn't use that language. Before we go on to that, without going into the finer details, the obvious question is going to be, what happened? How did you end there? Yeah, in your words.
It was a bit of misguided loyalty, really. A good friend of mine who'd looked after my partner at the time whilst I was away in Afghanistan. His family got in a bit of crap with a local sort of gangster and drug dealer, and he cooked up this idea that he was going to teach this guy a lesson. And I was on leave from a tour in Afghanistan, and he was saying, Craig, will you help me come and teach this guy a lesson? And on the face of it, I was like, yeah, he fucking deserves it. And so that's what we did. And the guy was a real player. Probably careful words I use now, but he was a real player in the criminal world. And in essence, we had a gunfight on his drive.
Right, okay.
And the thing that and looking back now, free of emotion and everything else, that I knew was wrong, was I felt perfectly at home.
Yeah. Perfectly
at home. I felt like an alien in my home life, married, with a young child, and trying to get on, going to the shops, didn't feel right. Going to the bank, couldn't even do. Answer the phone, not a chance. I just wasn't functioning in everyday life yet. This kind of, under fire, like.
It's what you knew. It's what you'd been exposed to. It's what you were trained for.
Yeah.
That was normalised.
Yeah, and unbeknown to us, was the guy was such a criminal that he was under observation, and everything was caught on camera. And basically my friend was caught by the police there and then and banged up, and I legged it, and I went straight into escape and evasion mode, and it was the depths of winter, and I was, again, just whether it was conditioning or whatever, I was doing likes of that. I tipped out a bin, got undressed, put all my clothes into a bin bag, swam across a raging bloody river, pretty much on New Year's Day, got on the other side, dry kit back on, you know, and I was in complete escape and evasion mode, and felt perfectly at home, like, which is obviously wrong. I know from there I was quite quickly picked up by the police. You know, I wasn't a criminal mastermind, and I got caught, and I went and it was looking like I was going to kind of not walk away, but I was going to get looked on quite leniently. The original charge was attempted murder, and part of my defence was if my intention was to kill the guy, he would have been dead. I had the opportunity and all that, and that was never my intention, which actually held water. You know, they could kind of see that. My career in the Marines and my commendations and all that, you know, stood me in good stead as well, and quite leniently, I ended up being charged with a reckless act of arson, which is quite a serious. It's quite a very serious. Let's not play it down. A very serious charge. I didn't realise how serious it was, but with arson, it suggests like a psychological thing. You know, not everybody starts fires and all this kind of stuff. And to be honest, you know, there was no fire, but this was the charge that we ended up with. And anyway, I picked up this charge. I went more or less from there straight to prison, and having lost everything really. And that's what I mean by I got here through failure. In the period of first being picked up by the police, I was on bail for about 18 months. So I was still in the Marines. I was under curfew, and I couldn't deploy or go anywhere or do anything. But I ended up with a job where I would look after the families of people that had been killed or injured. And I mean, that in itself was a stress. So I was looking after the families of lads that were either injured or killed. Ironically, the first 4 guys to get whacked, they didn't die, but they all, strangely enough, got shot in the ankle. They were based on top of a building, and a bullet ricocheted around the lip on the top of a flat roof and got them all in the ankle. One guy got shot in both ankles. The other guys got shot in one ankle. And they were all in my troop. So if I'd have been out there, I'd have been able to deploy, they would have been my guys. And they were the first guys to come back, and I looked after a couple of their families and a couple of the guys I'm still in touch with now. Real humbling experience. Another guy that I'd input into was a famous guy now called Mark Ormrod. He was the first triple amputee since the Second World War. Kind of looked after his family. That was around Christmas time. So all these things were kind of going on. Like, you know, I was trying to get my own life in order and deal with this imminent trial and prison sentence and everything. Yet I had to look after these, you know, the families, loved ones of people that had been hurt, and it was a real struggle. And there was times I would travel back from Selly Oak, the military hospital near Birmingham, just in floods of tears, trying to process everything and trying to get stock of everything and work it all out. To the point when it was a relief when I got sentenced.
I was just thinking that. I was thinking there's a sense of normality then, isn't it? You don't know what's coming, but there's a routine, isn't it? And you're used to routine then. So was there a crossover from that in terms of how you dealt with it? Yeah,
it's a bit like, wait till your dad gets home. You shit your pants all day. Yeah. He gets home, whacks you, and you're like, wasn't as bad as I thought. And that's what it was like. You know, I had 18 months of at the start, I was looking at life. I was looking at life imprisonment, you know, which was 12 years. And I was like, you know, then what? To get 5 years, knowing I would serve 2.5 if I kept my nose clean, was a relief. Like, it was a gift. It could have been so much worse. Again, obstacles and opportunities, isn't it? You know,
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
In the process of doing that, I had a psychological report. In there, it said, you know, showing signs, characteristics of PTSD. I never ever wanted to accept that as a label, and never did. You know, that was in the report, but I've never I know some people, it becomes their identity and they find it hard to shake off. I never wanted that as part of my identity. I just knew that I'm a thinker, and I think some people can overthink things. And there was things in the Marines that I'd spent a lot of time overthinking and questioning, and so through failure, I then was released on the 11th of November 2010, Remembrance Day, which I felt was a gift. I went straight from, in fact, I could talk about my time in prison, because that was pretty incredible as well. I managed to get to an open prison pretty quickly. So after 6 months, I went to an open prison, well before I should have done, really.
That's normally on good behaviour, isn't it? Is that
it's on good behaviour. So in a prison sentence, you have what's called a red date, and red stands for release eligibility date. So this is a date in which you could, if a family member died, you could perhaps go to the funeral because you passed your red date. You've served half of your servable sentence. So for me, it was half of 2.5 years. And I got to, basically, I ended up at a category A prison. So this is like top security. In fact, just below my window was a cage where Charlie Bronson used to exercise him. It was a serious prison up in Hull. And it was not too much like the garage that, the room that we're in now, it's pretty bleak, and it was pretty horrible. And I was chatting to people, and I was like, what happens now? How do I progress through this system? And, what do we do? And they said, well, you can perhaps try and get to like a Cat B prison, which is like a semi-open prison, where instead of being locked up 2 men in a room 23 hours a day, you're on like a block, and you'll have your own like little bit of a kitchen, and you've got a large communal yard, and you might be locked up just overnight or whatever. So that sounds better. So I put in all the paperwork and thought, I'm just going to put it in, see what happens. And after a week, I got it. I just could not believe it. And but I wrote a big case in there, of this is why I need to move and yada yada yada. And I got it. And I went to a semi-open prison, 5 miles from where the original incident took place. This guy being a major player in the criminal world, I was like, he has got to have friends in this prison. Yeah. And I didn't realise where I was going or how close it was until I drove past the guy's house in the prison bus, and I was like, my God, I recognise this place, and I know exactly where I am. And then drove into the prison. And when I got there was a large communal yard, and there was people getting slashed by improvised knives and stuff like that. And in fact, some people walking around with magazines and newspapers tucked down their belt, their trousers, to protect themselves from getting stabbed and slashed. And I was like, I'm probably going to get done here because of the proximity to the guy's house. So I was super alert, and a position. So start off, you go to what's called an induction wing, where you settle into prison, and they find you a place on one of the other wings. And a place came up on the drug rehab wing, and I didn't really know what the drug rehab wing was, but they said, you're going to be locked up 23 hours a day, your own private yard, and all this. And I thought, right, that's probably the safest place for me to be. So I was like, right, okay, I'll have that room. And I went, and luckily I got in with a guy who didn't have a drug problem, similar kind of thing to me. He was actually an all right guy to share a room with. And but it meant I was still locked up 23 hours a day. And what I started to do was I started to think, right, what is my best means of defense? And fight, freeze, flight. And I started to run. I started to run around the yard every time I got let out of my cell, thinking that if somebody wants to attack me, they'll have to catch me. And if they catch me, maybe they're too knackered to do anything. So I started running around the yard, and the yard was like 20 metres by 40 metres, wasn't very big, and I just used to do laps, and I became that Forrest Gump type person that, people must have been looking at me thinking, what is this idiot doing? Because I'd run around in my prison issue plimsolls and, and just keep running for the full hour, you know, and that's what I did as part of my routine as protection, really. I then managed to get like a single room and things were a lot better, but I still kept up the running. And whilst all this was going on, I knew I was struggling. Mentally, I was struggling. I spent a lot of time sort of crying and not really feeling sorry because I'd lost my career and all that. That was done and dusted, and I understood what I was dealing with. But I was still trying to process things that.
So is that sort of feeling a little bit lost? Is it? Or?
Yeah, lost, depressed, low, questioning things that I'd done in the past in the military. You know, some things that I'm like, I just don't know. Now that I've got my own kids, I don't know how that sits with me now. You know, because in the conditioning in the Marines, you're taught that it's the enemy. You know, it's a target. I had kids, and suddenly it was like, but it's not a target. It's a brother, a dad, a son, maybe some cases a sister and mother. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I don't know how this fits with me now. And I spent a lot of time trying to work it out and feeling guilt and, you know, and then there were times when I was struggling with images that were just imprinted on my brain and events that I'd seen and done in the Marines, and I was really struggling with it. Anyway, I progressed from there. I then put in all the paperwork to try and get to an open prison, which you don't usually get to until after your red date. You just don't. There's no point because you can't do anything. You can't have all the benefits of an open prison, i.e. doing like voluntary work or something like that until you've passed your red date. But I put all the paperwork in and thought, sod it, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I got moved to an open prison with pretty much 2 years left to serve on my servable sentence, which is way too early, really. But it all fell into place because it was everybody had to have a job. And I'd been told that the best job was in the gym. So I was like, right. But I'd been told there's a massive waiting list for the gym. There's no point trying to apply because, you know, yada. I thought, sod it, I'm just going to go and try. And I went to speak to the prison officers in the gym. It turns out there was 2 ex-Marines working in the gym, which I didn't know, and they didn't necessarily know me. But I spoke to the guy that ran the gym, and I said, look, you know, I've just got here. I've got months and months to go before I can get out and get a job or whatever. I'm really keen. I'm an ex-Royal Marine, yada, yada, yada. Any chance of a job? And he said, I'll get back to you. And it turns out he spoke to the other guys and said, you know, what do you think? And they basically said, well, if he's a Marine, you know, he should be all right, and let's give him a chance. And I got a chance in the gym. And that's when I started doing 2 things, really. First of all, studying things like I did a gym instructor's course, a personal training course, nutrition course, and I did loads of courses there as the gym. I worked in the gym environment, so that was good experience. And the other thing as well is that one of the guys, the ex-Marine, called Mark, I won't share his name, I probably shouldn't share his name, but he was very much an early adopter of CrossFit, functional training, primal nutrition, paleo nutrition, and he completely opened my eyes up to the way that you can achieve weight loss, you know, more than what people think the standard is. I mean, how long have we been trying to lose weight by controlling calories and, you know, all this kind of stuff, and it never really worked. And he completely changed my way of thinking and taught me things that I'm just like, I still, in my business now, foundational things in what we deliver. So anyway, went through that. Eventually, I was running out of time. Are we all? No. Eventually, I was. I became eligible to work, to go and work in the community, and I managed through a series of events and people that I know. I managed to get a job working for a charity that worked with kids with challenging behaviour. So every day, I would head out of the prison first thing in the morning. I would go to the college and I would teach them. They would basically, I taught them how to prepare to join the forces. So it was an armed forces preparation course, and which I wrote and delivered. And I was doing things like I couldn't have a car, but I went and got a gliding license. and all the prison officers were like, what the hell is going on here? You're supposed to be in prison. You're off abseiling every day, but it was just that's the skill set I had. And if I was a clerk and I could type, I would probably be typing. But that's just a skill set I had, and incredibly fortunate, and really, really grateful for that job as well. It was the first job that I ever had, and ever will have, if I'm honest. So I did that, and then eventually I would get out of the prison, and that was where things got really tough, because I'd gone from 2 institutions, and now I really didn't know how to fit in, and I had a criminal record, and I thought I'd lost all my credibility, and I just thought I was a real outcast, and I lived sort of homeless for a while. Well, I lived with a woman for a while who loved me, but I didn't love her. It pains my heart to say that, but that was true. I tried desperately, but it just wasn't going to work out. And I just basically wanted to run away and live in a cave somewhere. And eventually I did. Like I went and kind of lived on the streets for a bit, and dipped in and out of a friend's house as well, a bit of sofa surfing, but was pretty much homeless. I was living in the back of an old rusty van on a campsite, and but I was starting to get happy. Life was simple. I was catching rabbits and eating apples, and I was happy. I was kind of controlling things. I went for a couple of jobs, didn't get the jobs. Well, I went for one job, to be honest, and for an armed forces preparation course in a local college in Somerset where I was living. And because of the criminal record, I didn't get it. And I just remember being so embarrassed, thinking, I'm the best guy that's going to walk through this door for this job. And because of that, I'm not going to get it. And I made a promise to myself there that I'll never ever apply for another job, that I was going to work for myself, and, where it didn't matter, and my results and everything would speak for themselves. And that's what I've done. I haven't applied for a job since, and I have no intention of ever going for a job again in my life.
That sounds like a real sort of pivotal, enlightening moment of, right, someone else is prejudging me here on a piece of paper and obviously my history. That you've got a lot more to offer, so I'm going to take control here. And that probably ties into a little bit around freedom, so important to you. So how did you get to where you are today then? I can see the stories around, fitness, health, but, a huge part of your life for the past 10 years now has been Team Bootcamp, hasn't it? And helping others to lose weight. And that obviously crosses over with your experience in prison. So just talk us through that, and accelerate us through it, because it's an incredible story.
Yeah, so in effect, so what happened when I was in the rusty old van? I was like, what am I going to do? I went to the job centre. Job centre was like, look, you've got to do, you've no fixed address. You haven't paid national insurance for a couple of years. I've been in prison, you know what I mean? And all this kind of stuff. And it was just, I tried to get some kind of benefits, and they've said basically for 8 weeks, 9 weeks, whatever, you just can't claim anything. So 8 weeks, I'll have my own bloody, I'll be able to wipe my own ass and sort myself out. So it was just a waste of time. And I was just like, never again will I go cap in hand for anything really, and I was just like, enough's enough. If anybody's going to get you out of this, you are. It coincides with another event that went on, in that I was suicidal, and I very nearly drove my car into oncoming traffic. And the only reason I didn't, 2 things, was one, my 2 boys. I couldn't leave them without a dad. I already felt a failure to them because I'd been to prison, and I didn't want it to end like that. And then my mum, who stood by me through everything, constantly going, you made your bed, get on with it. You know what I mean? I'll be here to help you, but you got to get on with it, and that's where a lot of my strength comes from. And so I decided that through the gym courses and all that kind of stuff, I was pretty good at training people, and I quite enjoyed it. And my older brother my younger brother bought me a laptop. My little sister gave me a little internet dongle back in the day when you needed a dongle to get online. And my older brother built me a little website, and I started a little personal training business from the back of a van. And what happened was I soon realised that it doesn't matter how good a trainer you are, if you can't get the word out, you're just blowing in the wind. And so I started to look at marketing and the psychology of selling and all that. And I started to pick up clients, and I used half the money to live and pay for my pitch on the campsite and to eat and build the business. And then I spent the other half of the money on private counselling. I tried to get counselling through the NHS and a few service charities, well-known service charities, and they said I was too high a risk to help, which is just boils my blood. But it is what it is, and that wasn't going to stop me. And I went through the counselling, and it was immense. You know, I know there's different types of counselling, there's different types of therapy, and I know people they've tried stuff and it's not worked. But what I would say, if there's people out there struggling, keep searching, because I looked across. There's a woman in front of me, tiny little woman, looked like Thelma out of Scooby-Doo, and I was thinking, what the hell do you know about war fighting? Nothing. But I'd committed to myself to run the process. Whatever process she was going to run, I was going to run it and see where we go. You know, I owed it to my lads and to my mum to give it everything that I've got. And first session, I was like wasting my time, but committed to it and kept going. And then things started to fall into place. And I thought I was going to go and deal with dead bodies that were imprinted on my mind. And it soon, you know, when I started working other things out, that all fell away, you know. And after sort of 10 weeks, I was like, look, I'm golden, I'm ready to go. And but she was like, look, let's just keep, you know, got another couple of sessions, let's just keep going. And kept going, and they turned out to be the most enlightening sessions, and, you know, the pivotal sessions. It was just incredible. Got nothing but good words to say about that process. And then I started, so my personal training business was building, and I started working like freelance at a residential boot camp. And I met an incredible woman called Paula, who you know, and she was kind of managing this residential boot camp, and I ended up kind of managing the trainers and running like as the lead trainer. And we decided through a whole series of events, probably a different podcast or whatever, that we was going to set up our own place. In fact, I'd go as far as to say we had less than nothing, because I had a tarnished name, or I thought I had a tarnished name. And my wife Paula was my wife at the time, but she suffers with bipolar disorder. She's been sectioned 4 times. So I always say, you know, people have said to me in the past, I wish I had it easy like you. And I'm like, easy. You know, we started with less than nothing, yeah, you know.
Little did they know, eh?
Yeah, at least you're starting, even if you've got like nothing, you had so much more than we did, you know. But literally nothing. We started a residential boot camp. We rented somehow a £3 million home in the middle of the country.
As you do.
Yeah. And just started getting clients in there. And over a period of 7 years, we built it up to the point where we're about to feature on a BBC Two documentary tonight. We've literally had thousands of people from all over the world come and stay with us to lose weight and get fit. I think we worked it out recently that we've done about 42 tons of body fat in the time that we've been open, which is just an incredible amount of not only calories but work, you know, that people have gone through. And it's just going, you know, from strength to strength, and you know, that's it really.
Yeah, no, it's a lot more than that. I do think you know, that the principle behind Team Bootcamp and the way you deliver that is a whole nother conversation in itself. But I think just to paint the picture for the people at home, and obviously they can look at your website, Team Bootcamp, to see a little bit more. But people have this image in their mind of, you know, they just get thrashed day to day, you know, 6-7 sessions a day for a week, absolutely knackered, go home broken. Yes, they've lost a bit of weight, but there's so much more, isn't it, at Team Bootcamp? And I think that's what your USP is, everything else that goes around that. So, you know, could you just summarize your principles as Team Bootcamp? Yeah,
I mean, I'll give you an analogy that explains it perfectly, and that is, if you had £1 million racehorse, would you thrash it into the ground every day? No, you wouldn't. Why do it to yourself? You know, and every other boot camp, it's about thrashing people in the mud. And yes, they're going to lose weight, a lot of weight in a quick amount of time, but that's not sustainable. And as soon as you get home, because of the way that they've done it, they're going to binge on the way home and put all the weight back on, if not more. And there's a really high chance they're going to get injured. Even the military don't train like these boot camps train. So we decided that we would do it in a smarter manner. And TEAM is an acronym. It stands for Think, Eat and Move. And we now say Think, Eat and Move better. But we used to say Think, Eat and Move differently because we did it in a different manner. So we incorporated rest days into our training program. Because that's when we get fitter, and that's where, and we can make a program sustainable by having rest days in there. You can't perform 100% all the time; it's just an impossibility. We changed the way that they ate, so we have like a primal way of eating. We cut out a lot of processed and refined foods. We didn't count calories. We still don't count calories to this day. The reason being that a calorie works in a test tube in a scientific lab, but your body's not a test tube. And different foods do different things to prove it. 250 calories of Coca-Cola against 250 calories of broccoli. Completely different foods, different messages in the body, same amount of calories. And then on some food, on some weight loss programs, both acceptable. It's just ridiculous, But so we went against the grain with that. And then the move stuff, we did lots of like functional, intense sessions, but interspersed with those relaxation periods and rest periods. So we have hypnotherapy in there. We have, mindfulness and meditation in there. We don't do it so much now, but we used to send people to bed on a Wednesday afternoon. But people they started like heading off for a spray tan and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, right, okay, we need to change that. But, because that rest period that's the most important thing, so kind of that's how we do it.
Yeah, and there's so much crossover there regarding, again, the elite athletes that you get fitter in the rest periods, by the response to the training, not the actual training itself. Although that's got to be smart and designed correctly. It's all about the rest periods. And one of the biggest challenges we have with our athletes actually is that sleep. In terms of getting the rest period, so you're recovered enough so you can go and train again the next day, so you can improve through the rest of the day, and getting that psychological and physical rest, it's really, really important. And I think that's a key message, for everybody here, that regardless of what it is that creates your tiredness, you need to get that rest period. You need to manage your energy levels, because you'll just go in that vicious circle otherwise, won't you? Do you see a lot of people coming in sort of got burnout a little bit as well? Do they come here for a rest, if that makes sense?
Yeah, we get a lot of type A people, a lot of people from the corporate world that they feel a little bit, I don't know, they feel like they shouldn't take a holiday, that they should be working on something. If it's not work, then it's themselves. So they'll come to boot camp because it's acceptable as a holiday, a break. So we get a lot of people like that. And people come and you can just tell that they are fatigued, whether it's adrenal fatigue or whether it's just physical fatigue, you can just tell. And we have a thing where we sell people what they want. They want rapid weight loss and they want, activity and all this kind of stuff, but actually we give them what they need. So we'll pull them people out and we'll look at their adrenals and we'll really focus on their sleep, and there's a couple of things that we can do with food to help with that. So yeah, we're constantly looking at that. And it might be that we have a meeting in the morning, say, right, this person here is incredibly stressed. And actually the training, we're like, well, okay, whatever they do, not bothered. Yeah. But we're going to focus on getting them some good sleep, some good rest, turning the phones off, and we're really going to focus on that bit. So yeah, a hell of a lot. And it's that classic case, isn't it, that we always feel like we should be doing. Yeah. But whilst ever we're doing, we're not thinking. And the doing is just a stimulus. Like the fitness training is just a stimulus. It's a switch, it's a spark or whatever. The process, the power is in the rest, because that's when you take the stimulus and then you manage it, manipulate it or whatever, and that creates fitness in the fitness world. And it'll be the same in the corporate world, the doing is the stimulus.
Yeah, and I think so. That's the bit of using knowledge and science how to work smarter, isn't it? Not harder. And as humans, we're pre-programmed to, I'm up against it, let's just work harder. So let's check my emails at 11 p.m, 12 p.m, and then I've got a busy brain and I'm up again at 6 a.m. because I can't justify all that sleep. Well, actually, the easiest way to for people to sort of make sense of it or for it to resonate is whenever you've been in work and you've especially if you're sat at a desk, you know, and you go out for lunch and you come back, you solve the problems that you couldn't solve in the morning. They're a lot easier. It's because you've had a change of, you know, focus, change of reference. You've distracted the brain. The subconscious brain's carried on going, and you come back refreshed with a new set of eyes, and you'll be able to solve it on you. And, you know, sitting at that screen all day is not going to solve that for sure. Now, Craig, we've only just got started, mate, and we're rolling on and on. I know that, and we're time pressured. So, what a great backstory. What a great introduction. And I really want to, if it's okay with you, I want to pick this up in a few weeks' time, and I want to talk around, you know, your book, your experiences of doing the Marathon des Sables, and you've literally just come back from the Ice Ultra. These amazing experiences, and also your vision in the future regarding, you know, a Guinness World Record attempt for an amazing charity, and your plans for Bootcamp, and no doubt things I'm not even aware of yet that you've got up your sleeve. So, just for the guys at home that are listening in, where can they go and find out more information about what you're up to at the moment?
For Team Bootcamp, it is literally team-bootcamp.com. You can watch, obviously, type into Catch Up TV or whatever, Miriam's Big Fat Adventure, which is on the telly tonight, and you can kind of get a feel for that. Me personally, I have my own website that's getcraigwilliams.com, so you can check that out, and that'll lead you to all the different socials and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's it really. They're the two main.
Brilliant, and I'm sure people will follow up on that. Well, from my perspective, thanks very much. There's some new stuff in there. I mean, we've chatted for a long time. It was fantastic, and your candor and openness is really, really appreciated, and I'm sure it's resonated. And I don't think you realise how much of an inspiring person you are to a lot of people that you come in contact with, and it's only going to go on and have more positive effect for more and more people, not just through Bootcamp, but through your day-to-day job. And I can't wait to sit down and talk to you in the next episode where we look forward-facing. We talked a lot about now and the past. Let's look to the future and the great work you're going to be doing, and certainly the collaboration we're going to do together, because it's going to be special, that's for sure. So thanks so much, Craig. Much appreciated.
No, thanks for having me.